Hello, I'm Max Jalilovich, and these are the news from Kazakhstan. A policeman who is declared a victim in the Zhanaozen case revealed on Thursday that he fired his gun during December riots. The officer, however, said he did so out of fear and not because he was in grave danger. Detective Tolegan Shirikbayev also admitted he was not subjected to violence by the defendants, while another officer said that the regional reinforcements arrived to Zhanaozen at least one day prior to mass disorders. Police officers acting as victims in Aktau case continued to testify on Thursday. Authorized operative officer of Zhanaozen DIA revealed that he recognized some of the defendants as participants of December events, although none of them harmed him personally. Answering the defense question of why the officer is a victim if he has not sustained any injuries, the policeman said he was frightened and stunned by what he saw. The revelation unpleasantly surprised trial participants. Why weren't you wearing special uniform, and if you were dressed in plain clothes, why were you holding a gun?
I was afraid and held a gun just for defense.
If no one touched you, why did you start shooting?
I was frightened, so I opened fire. This fear made me shot 4 times at once.
Ulukbek Miltikov, the head of Committee for Public Safety under Mangistau Regional Police Department, reported that he had opened fire on December 16 as well. Unfortunately, he failed to explain why he did it. Did you give the order, shoot to kill?
No, I did not. I went ahead with raised hands saying, "Do not shoot people, look at me. Don't you recognize me?"
At this point, defendants showered the supposed victim with new questions, but the judge Aralbay Nagishabayev was busily postponing them to the next hearing. Displaced people were angry with untruthful victims. Lawyers came to the same conclusion during the break. They swore an oath, but I wonder if they keep to it. Who are the actual organizers of all this? The police was taken back, so perhaps it was the government itself. It stands to mention that the defendants now refuse to sit down during the hearing, protesting against the closed trial and demanding to let journalists record the process inside the courtroom. In addition, lawyers are concerned with health condition of their clients, but the judge holds his ground and any recording of the proceedings are still prohibited. Human rights activists who came from Astana to Aktau for the hearing say they did not see a closed trial as claimed by the defendants. At the insistence of Regional Court's press service on Thursday, reporters met with human rights activist Rashid Rakimov.
For 3 days he observed the trial and before the flight back to Astana shared his impressions. Rashid Rakimov reported in 2 languages that the trial over Zhanaozen events is under the personal supervision of the Supreme Court chair. His speech, however, lasted only about 5 minutes. It should be noted that this is an open trial. Equality of the sides is ensured, and the public has the right to attend the hearings. Media is also allowed to cover the trial so that all interested parties can follow the proceedings.
Political analyst Viktor Kovtunovsky compared the Zhanaozen violence with recent events in the United States, where 5 former New Orleans police officers were sentenced to prison terms ranging from 6 to 65 years for their involvement in deadly shooting of unarmed civilians several days after Hurricane Katrina. Kovtunovsky emphasized that American officers opened fire at Luther and were later prosecuted for what they did. In this light, he believes that local policemen should have been convicted instead of present defendants.
First of all, it is necessary to decide who should be considered responsible. Officially, people currently up for trial in Aktau are recognized as responsible. I have no doubts they will all get long prison terms. But in fact, the killings were done by policemen, so in my opinion, they should be the first ones to incur punishment. Public activist Zhasaral Kuanashalin also says the policemen's actions were absurd. While listening to their testimonies in court, he reinforces his belief the officers were following instructions from their superiors, which in fact makes sufficient grounds to consider them false witnesses. As for the policemen who were questioned as victims for the first time yesterday, many of them show contemptible behavior. They state they allegedly recognize someone in the room from a photo. You see, there is no logic. They follow the memorized behavior pattern and voice everything they had been previously taught. That makes them false witnesses.
Several members of the European Parliament questioned the fairness of the trial in Aktau. On Thursday, Paul Murphy gave his official comments regarding his rejected visa application. The EMP planned to visit Aktau on April 4 together with several leaders of European labor unions. However, Kazakh embassy in Brussels rejected their visa applications without citing any reasons. Murphy now plans to ask for the reconsideration of his application. In the past, Kazakhstan's foreign ministry said that it might declare some of the European parliamentarians personas non grata following their criticism of the situation in Zhanaozen. This makes Paul Murphy believe that rejection of his visa is politically motivated.
No information given about why it was denied, but for us it is perfectly clear that it was denied for political reasons, because they're afraid of the truth about what happened in Zhanaozen coming out even more than it already has done. Which is that the state forces were obviously responsible for the violence. In my opinion, that's what we would have found, and that they want to avoid that and therefore won't allow me a visa. I think it's very bad because it shows they're not interested in having a serious debate, allowing people access to the information, and instead they are pretending.
During his short vacation, President Nazarbayev is undergoing chemical therapy treatment required after his prostate surgery, said an undisclosed source within the president's administration in his message to the website Respublika. Initially, the information about Nazarbayev's possible cancer diagnosis was revealed by his former son-in-law, Rahat Aliyev. Our secret sources reported that Nursultan Nazarbayev first went to Germany, where he underwent the long-prescribed course of chemotherapy to treat a prostate tumor at the University Medical Center, Hamburg-Eppendorf. Next, the president proceeded to Abu Dhabi, where he is vacationing together with his young wife and underage children. The information that Nazarbayev divorced First Lady Sara was recently revealed by Rahat Aliyev, who has also previously stated that Nazarbayev needed urgent chemotherapy after the parliamentary elections. Back then, Nazarbayev visited Germany and then spent almost a week in the Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, according to online news agency Vlast.kz, police sources say that they will find the authors of the joke on April Fool's Day about the death of the Kazakh president. A macro with the joke, presenting its official information from the Russian RBK channel, was uploaded to the Russian meme collecting website Fishki.net. In the past, Fishki already featured a popular joke about Nazarbayev, which said he declined from running for presidency. On Thursday, Senator Murat Bakhtiaroglu proposed to establish a day of commemoration for the victims of the mass famine of the 1930s.
The tragedy in early 1930s was a result of heinous crimes, says Murat Bakhtiaroglu. The genocide at the hands of the Soviet totalitarian system reduced Kazakh population by half, the senator says. According to demographic analysts, the current population of Kazakhstan could number up to 15 million people, if not the mass starvation. The MP calls for the spreading of the valuable knowledge internationally by publishing the research of Kazakh scientists who studied historical records in English. We believe the time has come to reveal the sad truth about the cause of mass starvation, the great tragedy for Kazakh people. The real scale, damage and consequences of starvation are yet to be revealed.
On Thursday, James Mattis, the commander of the U.S. Central Command, met with Kazakh Foreign Minister Yerzhan Kazkhanov. The officials discussed mutually beneficial cooperation between the two countries.
The territory of Kazakhstan will not become a base for the US in case of the military operation against Iran. This was stated on Wednesday by Altay Abibullayev, the official representative of the Kazakh Ministry of Internal Affairs. Yesterday, during the visit of James Mattis, the meeting with the press was limited to the protocol footage. At the same time, the US general noted that the sides mainly talked about logistic issues.
We discussed areas that we can work together, economic areas, logistics areas, matters that mutual interest.
A citizen of Kazakhstan is charged with smuggling extremist propaganda into Uzbekistan. The 20-year-old Yermek Kosmagambetov and his girlfriend planned to visit Bukhara to celebrate Nowruz, but were detained at the border when customs officials found suspicious video in the couple's netbook.
A trial against a citizen of Kazakhstan was opened on Thursday in Uzbekistan. Yermek Kosmagambetov is accused of smuggling religious extremism video into the country. Kosmagambetov was detained together with his friend Akmaral Shakirova during a customs check on March 16th, when 6 suspicious videos were found among the files in his netbook. Shakirova, who was later released, explained at a press conference yesterday that the netbook in question was borrowed and videos carried no extremism content. However, under the Uzbek legislation, Kosmagambetov could end up with a prison sentence of up to 10 years.
Учитывая тяжесть совершенных Космагамбетовым преступлений,
given the gravity of Kosmagambetov's offense and to prevent the accused from committing more crimes, the prosecutor applied for preventive measure in the form of Kosmagambetov's detention. Kosmagambetov's friends and family have already appealed to all possible authorities for help and protection of a Kazakh citizen against what they call insubstantial accusations. At the time, only well-known human rights activist Evgeny Zhovtis answered their call. We will render assistance when we have more information. Currently, we have only a general idea that a person was arrested for crossing a border with some computer video of religious content. So it is hard to understand now what exactly he is charged with. The authoritarian Uzbek position is actually similar to the democratic practices of Kazakhstan. When it comes to terrorism and extremism, all trials and supporting information immediately becomes confidential, says political analyst Rasul Zhumali. Like other analysts, he notes that if the government really wants to combat terrorism, such matters should stay open to the public. It is not just a case of finding a guilty party and then punishing it. Any double guessing and insinuations should be avoided at all costs. There should be a transparent trial with an accused and his lawyers so that people could make their own conclusions if it is fair or not. This is a powerful propaganda tool to show other criminals what could happen to them. But finding a scapegoat just for the sake of punishing someone, coupled with the lack of available information, might have quite the opposite effect. It is yet unknown whether and when the state will help Kosmagambetov's family and friends. Kazakh diplomatic community has already shown a disinterest in the defendant's fate. Instead, they refused to protect the interests of a Kazakh citizen in court and recommended him to find a good local lawyer.
On Thursday, Shymkent law enforcement prevented an act of public self-immolation when pensioner Kulzinat Kadyrbayeva resorted to desperate measures to save her house. Find out more from the next report.
Around 100 police officers, rescue workers and doctors arrived at Kulzinat Kadyrbayeva's house. In her hands, she has an eviction notice from the court instructing her together with children and grandsons to leave the house that she had built with her own hands. Nevertheless, the old woman is not planning to give up her house to conmen. The axe she had bought was intended for her grandsons, while she picked public self-immolation for herself. I bought an axe. First I wanted to kill my grandsons and then set myself on fire. I even called the TV and informed that I was going to kill my whole family. I can't stand it any longer. I've been told to this day that I had a chance. Turns out I was deceived. According to Kadyrbayeva, she fell victim of conmen. 5 years ago, the woman had a house and a store right in the city center and was selling it for $250,000. The buyer contacted her, left a down payment of $62,000 and later disappeared. What happened later is a mystery, since the buyer somehow managed to compile all the documents behind the owner's back, proving that the house belonged to her. The matter was taken to court. There were more than 20 trials held and the house owner lost all of them. Failing to find justice, Kadyrbayeva resorted to desperate measures. The old woman had a close call, but fortunately was saved. This time she managed to get the law enforcement's attention, although it is very difficult to evoke a response from here. Now we might assume that the decision will be somewhat in her favor. It is clear that she is not lying and that she is mentally sane. She explained to us that she didn't want to leave anymore. Several people who found themselves in similar situations gathered near the old woman's house. They became homeless too. The police, arriving at the scene, documented the incident and promised to sort things out in the near future. At the same time, they admitted that they can do nothing to change the court's verdict. She's not the only one with a claim here. We have several people accusing Aypergenova of fraud. We will speak with everyone involved and collect their statements. A decision will be taken during the investigation. It is possible that tomorrow the family of 7 will end up living on the street, but Kidyrbayeva made a clear statement that unless the situation is resolved next time, nothing will stop her.
More housing problems, this time in Karaganda, forced shared construction investors to block the central street of the city. The recently finished apartment block is already in emergency condition and was deemed too dangerous to live in by the city authorities.
We had to do this now since no one is giving us any guarantees. We don't know if the building will be rated as in emergency condition. We have been waiting for 2 weeks with no response. We only need the authorities to comfort us, saying they care about our problems. Rally participants told reporters that residents were urgently evacuated from the recently built house after its walls were cracked from the bottom to the top. Not all of them managed to take their belongings outside. Those who had no placement options were accommodated in the hospital located in the city outskirts. The Bisoba complex was built by the Promstroysnap, currently under investigation by the financial police. The city mayor also attended the rally. This is an emergency situation with the risk of a collapse. We have taken the whole situation under our control. Quite possibly the building will be fully rated as unserviceable, and then we'll take it from there by employing automatic legislation.
The hearing over the lawsuit submitted by the head of Astana's Real Estate Co-Investors Union opened yesterday in the capital city court. Zauresh Batalova is suing city mayor Ismangali Tasmagambetov and is seeking a compensation in the amount of the entire wage Tasmagambetov made while on the position.
The hearings on the Batalova's lawsuit against Tasmagambetov started at 11 o'clock. The judge presiding the trial made it open for public attendance, which resulted in a courtroom filled by about 50 interest holders and mortgage borrowers. There are other people whose inquiry to hold a rally at the end of February was turned down by the city administration. At that event, Astana residents intend to raise the issue of Zhanaozen investigation and demand the authorities to allow the population be more involved in state affairs. The authorities responded, saying that the requested square was also booked for some other rally on February 25th. The premise, however, remained empty on the indicated date. We want financial compensation of around $30,000 paid by the city mayor Imangali Tasmagambetov. This amount is his wage received while on the position from March 2008 to February 2012. Public activists have calculated the amount based on the average wages of Astana residents. They, however, can only guess about the real earnings of the city mayor. In the case of victory, activists plan to transfer the money to the December 16 Victims Aid Foundation. Tasmagambetov, though, didn't show up at the hearing, instead delegating his young subordinate Amangeli Abdukirimov, who insisted his boss is in no way linked to the case at hand. The decision about the rally was made by the city administration staff as a body, not the mayor personally. And since the claimants are arguing the decision of a local governing body, the mayor cannot be considered a defendant in the case. Hence, we asked to decline the motions. The atmosphere in the courtroom became even more tense following the statements, and the judge even had to intervene. This is not a place for rallies. We're trying to sort things out here. I call everybody in the room to obey the rules. The plaintiffs, however, still insist it is Tasmagambetov who is personally to blame, saying the ban from holding rallies create even more social tensions. Human rights activist Zauresh Batalova reminded to the judge at the closing of the hearing that she had won cases against the Astana city administration before. For instance, back in 2008, after Batalova's action, Askat Mamin suspended the mass demolition of buildings in the capital. We're going to protest this further through the prosecution office, and we may take it as far as the Supreme Court. Also, thank God, Kazakhstan finally ratified the option protocol to the Civil Act of the Political Rights, which now allow us to appeal to the UN Human Rights Council, who will take the issue on to the UN level. The next hearing was scheduled for April 26, which will be attended by Tasmagambetov's deputy Aida Balayeva.
Jaksilik Doskaliyev's criminal case involving embezzlement of state funds as part of the state project for the development of telemedicine in villages has been requalified as negligence. The statement on the matter was made yesterday by the financial police representative Murat Jumanbay. While Doskaliyev's case ended positively, resulting in his release on March 16th after being amnestied, the outcome of the case involving Umurzak Uzbekov, the ex-head of the Land Resource Management Agency, is less optimistic. In October last year, the official and his subordinates were charged with embezzlement of more than $1 million, which were allocated for the creation of marine map of the Caspian Sea. Investigation suggests that money was stolen through the double payment methods for the services of developing the map as well as the fiscal documents fraud. Uzbekov is awaiting his convicting verdict under home arrest. The review of the convicts and their defendants' materials is in progress at the moment. It's soon going to be completed. Then the criminal case is going to be passed on to the prosecution bodies. On March 24, Almaty pensioner Baurjan Minajadinov planned to take part in a rally, but instead ended up in intensive care. His condition rapidly worsened during interrogation in the Zhetisu DIA. Security officers pressured Minajadinov into testifying about the distribution of invitations for the rally in commemoration of Zhanaozen victims. I had a fit of polycardia and I told the investigator immediately that I need medical assistance. He promised to call the ambulance but kept the interrogation going, following with unsuccessful witness identification process, and that's when I felt completely unwell. Then it became apparent that no one actually called for the ambulance at that point, so eventually when it did show up, I ended up here in the intensive care. According to doctors, Baurjan Minajadinov's condition is satisfactory at the moment. 12 days ago, he was brought to the hospital with a heart attack. Previously, Minajadinov, working as a janitor in the tax agency, had an expository talk with his employer, who proposed him to quit his job without explaining the reasons. Minajadinov refused and asked to deal with the situation in the legal way. Baurjan Minajadinov links the law enforcement's interest in him and the employer's position with his participation in the series of single-person rallies he organized in support of imprisoned opposition leader Vladimir Kozlov and public activist Seruk Sapargali. Members of the public coalition Khalik Maydani demand the authorities to stop persecution against Kazakhstan's Communist Party. The 6-month suspension of the party's operation should be lifted on April 24. However, 2 regional courts have already issued new suspension decrees for another half a year. Activists say this way the authorities are trying to eliminate the party altogether. Khalik Maydani demands the authorities to stop the political despotism against its opponents, legalize the Communist Party activities, cancel all political decisions made by courts, and restore the political balance within the state. Coalition of Democratic Forces, Khalik Maydani. Almaty pensioners strongly oppose the recent rise of electricity rates by 7%. The outraged seniors went as far as holding a picket next to the city administration. The next report has more.
Irina Savostina, the leader of the movement Pokolenie Generation, replaced all the light bulbs in her house with the energy-saving ones. This was the first thing that the retired woman did when she learned that as of April 1st, electricity rates in Almaty and the entire region will rise by 7%. Savostina cannot accept the government's pricing policy. After paying their bills, retired people will afford only 1 meal per day and no medicine at all.
За что уничтожают пенсионеров? За что?
Why are the pensioners being humiliated? I believe that if electricity rates go up, the prices for bread will go up as well. All the ovens that bake bread are electrical, so that means that everything that is made with electricity will become more expensive. Life will become unbearable. The day before the rise of electricity rates, Almaty pensioners took to the streets and organized a picket near the city administration. They even wrote a letter to the mayor Ahmedjan Yesimov asking him to curb the prices, but received no response. It seems that no one is going to hold the prices in check. During a press conference on Thursday, Anar Rahimbayeva, the acting director at Natural Monopolies Regulation Department in Almaty, only explained to journalists by how much the rates have grown. For consumers in Almaty city and Almaty region, the rate is 13.2 tenge. It is imposed starting April 1st and indicates the growth of 7%. Generation leader Irina Savostina says that pensioners in the neighboring countries have benefits when it comes to paying for utilities, but there are no benefits in Kazakhstan. The retired woman even notes that the electricity prices were more stable during the Second World War. Their electricity prices never rose during the war, and those were cruel and destructive times. The prices back then were stable and everyone could afford to pay them. Now they're constantly threatening us, saying we'll cut off the power. Electricity was never cut off during the war, although poverty was widespread.
Вот сейчас все отключим, отключим. В то время не отключали.
The retired people who formed the advocacy group and organized the meeting last weekend protesting against the rise of prices promised that they will pay a visit to city administration this Saturday. Currently, they're expecting a response from the administration head.
On top of rising energy rates, Kazakhstan's rail and air fares have gone up as well. The recent statement from Air Astana regarding new ticket prices was followed on a Thursday with a negative reaction from the country's MPs. The rise in airfare by Air Astana due to the increase of aviation fuel costs has been referred to as unprecedented by Senator Kasymov. He believes that this way the local leader in air transport services encourages other companies to follow its example. Kasymov defines this as collusion and suggests the government offsets the cost to passengers. The 16% jet fuel cost-inspired rise in prices by Air Astana means that everyone engaged in oil trade will now increase their prices too. In that case, it would be fair to increase the salaries of all citizens by 16% as well. It should be noted that the parliament has been long calling to account to major airline of the country, which provides a fair share of domestic and international transportation services. The MPs question not only pricing policies but also the quality of service, catering and regular flight delays. The dissatisfaction was even addressed personally to Peter Foster, the company's manager. Today I planned to travel from Almaty to Astana at 9, but the flight was delayed by 2 hours. What kind of service is that? On top of everything, Kazakhstan's airlines do not meet flight safety requirements. 37 national transport companies have once again ended up blacklisted by the European Union. Interestingly, the European airspace has been also restricted for Bechtel Airlines, a company which frequently services government officials and personally Prime Minister Karim Masimov. Meanwhile, Air Astana was only partially hamstrung by the European Union, which banned just a few planes of the company's fleet to enter its airspace. This is all we have time for now. Join us tomorrow for more. Thank you for watching and goodbye.